And then he goes into a very good situation with an organization or a team that's already built up versus a team that these guys go into, and it's going to take them years to get to this point. The Chicago Bears, another team that is going to be looking for a quarterback.
Yeah.
So, but based on where they're at, they're going to be a team that's in the teens that would have, unless they traded multiple firsts, had no shot at it. Now, all of a sudden, it seems realistic. Well, the Bears are bad because they had to trade all their picks to the Raiders, but would they be willing to trade other future firsts to come back in and get this guy? So there's a lot out of this, Eric, but I just want to know who is advising Tua, because this is a guy, you have your draft stock, you have your career path, you get this ankle injury. I suffered through watching the tightrope surgery videos and didn't pass out from it because that's really not my forte. That's your thing. But I watched the video on how to do it. And at the very end, it says 6 to 12 weeks, non-weight bearing. Tua had this surgery, and less than 3 weeks later, he was back on the field for LSU. Who is advising someone like this that you're sitting there? Unless this guy has some kind of loss of value policy or some kind of injury policy worth $100 million. Why is he out there 3 weeks or less than 3 weeks after this surgery playing again, Eric? That's what I don't understand. And look, college football has a lot of issues. College sports in general have a lot of issues when it comes to paying players and players' likenesses and things like this. Yeah. But in these situations, Eric, to me, the question is, well, should Nick Saban have taken him out at halftime? No, the question should be, why is Nick Saban in Alabama playing a guy less than 3 weeks after this kind of procedure? Why are they doing that to this kid? If he's really a student athlete, are you taking his best interest in, or is the best interest of Alabama first and foremost? And to me, that question got answered very boldly by Alabama with how they've treated Tua through this process.
Yeah, and I can't really argue that, although there are some reports out there that said Saban was trying to pull him out of the game, and Tua said, just one more series. I just want one more series. And Saban actually was rumored to have said, you're not going back in, right before this happened. And it's one of those Alanis Morissette, isn't this ironic, even though that song should be called Isn't This Coincidental? But it's one of those moments where if Saban had ruled that moment, then Tua wouldn't have been in the game and this wouldn't have happened. And that, is to your broader point that, was Tua saying, yeah, I feel fine after this tightrope surgery. I want to play. We don't know where that stands, but I think your broader point is still true that the college football and the team and the university is always benefiting from these guys. I think back to Mackenzie Milton when he absolutely wrecked his knee for UCF, and he was the best thing going for UCF for years, and, ruins his career with an absolute total implosion of his knee, similar to Teddy Bridgewater. So it's a situation where, and I know I'm not going to try to make you queasy, but I do think we need to discuss this at least briefly because, the Bo Jackson thing, it keeps coming up on Twitter. And I think what people need to understand and what listeners do need to understand is Bo Jackson did not end up out of the league due to the partial dislocation of his hip. And the two dislocations, by the way, are different. Bo's was a partial dislocation. And what happened was it was outside of the socket or partially outside of the socket a little bit too long. That led to avascular necrosis, which led to bone and cartilage dying and ultimately led to his hip replacement, which meant he couldn't play football anymore. So it was sort of a domino effect with Bo Jackson. Now, Tua's very fortunate because they were able to reset that joint right away. And what we don't know is, will Tua also have avascular necrosis? And the hope is that he won't, but that isn't something that you will know right away. It's going to take time. And what would happen is if that blood flow was cut off or damaged during a period of time before they pop that hip back in, that femoral head is going to die, and then it won't sit in the socket correctly. Now, Tua's injury is actually worse than Bo Jackson's because Bo Jackson's pelvis did not break. Tua's pelvis actually broke. The acetabulum, which is the part that the ball joint sits in, basically the socket of the hip, the posterior wall of that broke in Tua's case because he was landed on with his leg bent and it sort of sent the hip backwards. And so his injury, it required surgery immediately. And that's why they flew him to the hospital, and he had surgery today on Monday. And it was a serious situation. We don't know. And Justin, you made an excellent point. We don't know what the prognosis is truly for Tua. And then we also don't know what the full recovery is. And I listened to one podcast where a doctor was talking and to your point, it was a hip doctor, but he was saying, look, will this guy make a full recovery for a normal person? Yeah, probably. But what we don't know is, does he make a full recovery in terms of an NFL quarterback? Those are two very different things. Right now, Tua's worried about quality of life. Can I just walk normally? Am I going to develop post-traumatic arthritis in this hip? That's another thing they don't know. So yeah, the necrosis is one thing, but what if he develops arthritis? Justin, there are things, even though he can heal from the surgery, that could still prevent him from being an effective quarterback. And so back to our original question as we wrap up the show and talking about his draft stock, as I look at it, you already have a guy who's not tall. He doesn't have the biggest of arm strength. He does decently, but he's not Patrick Mahomes out there. And now he's got the ankle. Now he's got this. Yeah, he might still be first round, but he's probably going to be late. Now, Colin Cowherd's whole thing is it's the best thing that ever happened to him. I mean, to me, that is it's just such a rude thing to say to someone who just basically shattered their hip. That's the best thing that could have happened to you because you might get drafted by the Patriots. I mean, look, Colin, come on. Just don't even go there. But he's not going to be ready for the drills prior to the combine. He's not going to participate in the combine. He's not going to be healthy before the draft. And now you're going to draft a guy who maybe doesn't even play in 2020. And we don't know. Does he have arthritis? Does he have a vascular necrosis? What are you investing in this when you could pick up one of the other quarterbacks? This is a pretty quarterback heavy draft. So Justin, I think this is a huge impact to this young man's life. And it's unfortunate because we just got done talking about a quarterback who's a complete a-hole, basically, to the league. And now we have another guy who, by all accounts, has tried to do everything right and is a fantastic college quarterback and might now have his NFL career impacted forever. And so it's just a really sad situation.
And that's where I get back to just the question of who's advising Tua, because I feel like at some point, with the injuries that he had the tightrope surgery last year. He's had multiple injuries, knocked around in games. He got hurt last year going into the championship games or the playoff rounds, and he was limping through the SEC games. And this year, even coming back from the tightrope surgery, he's limping around. You can tell he's not 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that he wants to play. Anybody that's playing a sport that loves it wants to be out there with their team, especially when they're still alive, for a chance to get back and to win a national title, and for Tua to win another national title before he leaves Alabama. I don't doubt that at all. I just think at some point you got to take the helmet, just like we see when guys are in concussion protocol, when guys have an injury. You saw it on the Monday night game with Seattle and the 49ers, where all of a sudden Tyler Lockett's not in the game at the most crucial point. Well, it turns out he had a horrible contusion with swelling, and he ends up at the hospital. So at some point, those NFL teams go, oh my God, this is our best young wide receiver. We've got to take care of him. In college, Eric, it feels like, well, we only had these guys for so long. Let's just use them up. And I think that's my problem with this, is where I just feel like at some point they should have put their heads together and been like, this is a pretty significant injury. I don't know if Tua is going to be ready. Yeah, he can test through and he can still throw the football and all that, but can he get away from these guys? Does he have the same speed when he's rolling out? I just don't think anything like that was considered. And when you're sitting there with this quarterback, he's already come into a game, won you a national title. He's kept you in national prominence. And you're looking at what his future could be, and the fact that now you have affected it immensely to the point where maybe he doesn't ever even get on an NFL field. And you start to look at the millions and millions you've costed him for basically meaningless games at this point, because they need so much help now to get into the playoff system. That's where I just feel like at some point they should have just put some heads together and thought about the student athlete more. And the whole notion of like, well, we'll give these guys stipends. We'll give them $20,000 a year. Who cares if you're Tua about $20,000? Well, what's that matter to him? You've taken his chance to make millions.
Make $100 million.
Yeah. I mean, if he is even a top 15 guy, all you got to go look at Kirk Cousins' contract. Go back to our other episodes and talk about it. Fully guaranteed $84 million. That's the kind of money these guys, that even if they're fringe top 10, if they're top 15, if you give them any reason for a team to keep them, they're going to get huge paydays. And you just took that away from Tua. It just feels like, Eric, this was maybe avoidable in that maybe Alabama and their doctors and Tua and his advisors should have said, you know what? Maybe he's not healthy enough to be out there. No doubt in my mind that he wants to play. I completely understand that these guys want to play, but we've seen guys in these bowl games, McCaffrey, Fournette, and Jamal Adams are going at it on Twitter about Fournette not playing and quitting on the team. But at some point, when you've given these guys and these teams 1, 2, 3 years, and you start to look ahead at what one more game could cost you, that becomes, Eric, where
everything
they need to take into account.
Yeah.
Jalen Smith could have lost his leg and his draft stock dropped. Myles Jack, we saw the same thing with him. These guys, their draft stock drops. And you know what? The college doesn't care. Yeah, you can come back and get your degree. Well, big whoop. I mean, there's not like there is 7-figure a year jobs just sitting out there for these guys with whatever degree they're going to get. They had an opportunity to have life-changing money for them and their family, and you took it from them. And these are the top guys, and they're the ones that are bringing in this revenue for the programs. That's my issue with this of just, I wish college would have a better system. And maybe it's something for a different podcast about how these guys, the 3 years of forcing players, all the players. Trevor Lawrence, Eric, was ready to go to the league, what we saw after his freshman year.
Yeah.
And now you're sitting there now for 2 years, and you know what he's doing? Yeah, he probably doesn't look as good because he's probably sitting there going, I'm one hit away from affecting my draft stock in 2 years.
He's counting the days now.
And if I was him, I know he probably loves the game and he loves Clemson. He loves the college life. But at some point next year, when you see this Tua stuff, in his mind, you've got to be going, you know what? Maybe I'm better off to sit out a year and just work with trainers and hire the best quarterback coaches and learn different offenses and just really focus on that side of the game and not take my chances on losing out on being the number one pick and just taking my lottery ticket and putting it in a paper shredder. Eric, I would not be surprised at all if we heard that he wanted to do that, and that being Trevor Lawrence, because of what we've seen with Tua.
This is a fantastic topic. I think it's going to be a growing topic that we're going to have to discuss on another episode because it's going to be talk worthy. This is only moving the needle forward, as you said, for guys either in the past that have dealt with this same thing. The name I brought up, Milton, probably would have been a quarterback that was in that conversation of draftable QBs. And in the future, quarterbacks who still have time left in college football who might say, you know what? There might be more creative options. Maybe there's going to be another business that gets started, which is a business of training guys who are identified as NFL top prospects to where we can keep them in shape, keep them at this high level of physical fitness and all of the combine skills that they're going to need. And then teaching them playbooks and teaching them all this stuff. I don't think any rules that says these guys can't train, but then they don't have to deal with the game action. And so I don't know where this is going to go, but I think it does open up Pandora's box when you see big name players like Tua who have really career altering injuries here that just changes the landscape of the game. And hopefully it does add more to the conversation about how much the universities are benefiting off of these college athletes when something like this happens. And if Tua never plays another down in football and doesn't go to the NFL, how much it has changed his life. And yet Alabama has really a lot of wins and a lot of benefit from his time on the field. So Justin, with that, we're going to wrap it up. We'll put the nice little bow on this episode. I don't know if we got to watch out here in the studio, if Garrett is going to be flying through here with a helmet to try to knock us off the mics, or maybe Colin Kaepernick will come in and tell us why we're wrong and why he would be a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL. But I got to say that Tua, I think, would have been a top 5 quarterback, and now we just don't know where that's going to go. So we appreciate everybody listening. Keep us in mind when you go to Twitter, because yes, we're recording on Wednesday night, But as news breaks throughout the week, as we